Perfect. And very quickly, I'm going to introduce Larissa. So, Larissa is a mindset coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and chronic illness mentor. Larissa also lives with MS herself and is married to someone with another chronic illness. So, she has lots of experience with the unique challenges that illnesses like MS can bring to relationships. So, hopefully, this event will help you learn how MS and illness can affect relationships and communication dynamics, common communication challenges and how to navigate them, how to express your needs clearly without guilt or frustration, and practical strategies to strengthen connection and understanding as well. So, thank you so much, Larissa. I'm going to hand over to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to hear more about your experiences and for us to learn together how to improve our communication as well. Just curious before I start, what's your experience with MS? Do you have MS, or are you in a relationship or a family member of somebody who has MS? I'm just curious. If you could either feel free to speak or write it in the chat. Maybe write it in the chat, that'll be less chaotic. So I have a mess. I see a few people have a mess. Okay. Maybe. Does anybody here not have a mess, but maybe is a friend or has some sort of relationship with somebody who has MS? Okay, so I see you looking at the chat. It seems like a lot of people have MS, which is good. All right, well, you're in the right place then. And oh, your partner has MS. Thank you, Claire. Okay. So my aim is to support you in the best way I can in navigating this challenge. As Amy mentioned, I am somebody who has been battling MS. I've actually had it for 7 years and counting. And it's given me the opportunity to learn a lot about the illness, learn a lot about relationships, and to see how this sort of struggles can be managed. I'm going to share my screen now in a moment. Just bear with me, and I should have a little presentation starting. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Otherwise, Amy, let me know if you can't see anything.
All good.
Okay, thank you. So the learning agenda, Amy already mentioned what we're going to do today. So I want to mention a few things about myself. I'm a hypnotherapist and coach. I actually work with people with mental health challenges. And for the last years, I've actually supported people with MS as well to navigate their relationships, to navigate the challenge of being newly diagnosed, to the mental health aspect of the illness, and I use hypnotherapy for the physical symptoms as well. The reason why I mention this is that I've had the chance to develop some perspective around this illness and some of the challenges that appear as well. When it comes to my experience, I've been in a relationship for about 14 years. So my partner was with me at the time when I was diagnosed. And then later on, he also, during COVID time, was diagnosed with another autoimmune illness, a form of arthritis, which caused inflammation all over his body and resulted in pain, brain fog, and a lot of the symptoms that are quite similar with MS, but equally some symptoms that were very different as well. Before I continue, what's the biggest communication challenge that you have found in your relationship or that you currently face when it comes to having this illness or maybe being with somebody who has this illness? I'd like to hear your experience with it first. And if it's okay to write it in the chat, your answers, then Amy can read them for me.
We've got one that says dreading their reaction, explaining symptoms and how I feel, telling them I have MS,
Okay, interesting.
them understanding my limits, understanding how I feel myself and then how to explain it, fear of people not understanding, apologizing for having MS and afraid to meet someone out of fear, and people think I won't be able to do things in the future.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. So we have such a variety of experiences just being in this group. And it shows that MS affects us all in different ways. And it affects the relationships we have with others in different ways as well. And I will say the biggest challenge with this illness is that it's not just the one symptom and everybody has it, and a bit like having the flu. Everybody sort of relates with having the flu. It's like, okay, you have a runny nose, maybe a headache, maybe you need to lay in bed, then people understand that. But with MS, the symptoms that we experience are like a palette, and some days, some people at the same time will be like worse than others. Even though we all have MS, our experience is very different and very unique. So learning how to communicate this unique experience that we have to others is important, but it's also an opportunity for them to get to understand our world and how we see it and the challenges we face. So about your symptoms as an opportunity for others, and keep that a thought in your mind. Okay. So some of the hidden struggles with MS, as you've mentioned, is the symptoms, communicating the symptoms, and the fact that some of our symptoms are visible to others. So we can't really, people won't, sometimes we look normal and people won't see what's going on behind the scene. They may not understand that on some days we have brain fog. They may not understand that we have pain all over the body or that we're fatigued. They may not understand that we're just not 100%. And this is not our fault that this is happening. It's an experience that we have. It's not their fault for not being able to see through, to read in a glass bubble.
Excuse me.
Sorry, I thought I heard something. If you have any questions, write them in the chat. All right. And different. Some of the symptoms that impact communication that I found and I've heard in others are things like fatigue that makes the conversation exhausting. The lesions in the brain can affect the speech. We may have slow speech, slurred sometimes, pain and mobility, which makes it hard to move, hard to talk, feeling exhausted a lot. And then being perceived as others in a different way, being perceived as we're not caring about the relationship, being perceived as maybe we're lazy in some way because we're feeling we're just not doing anything as much as them, and we're not keeping up with the relationships and the social life as well. And then some of the communication challenges can come from the inability of our brain to actually keep up with the conversation. So things like brain fog or memory issues that come up, forgetting things that you've mentioned, not being able to keep track of a conversation, not being able to process sometimes the conversation that happens. And also when it comes to emotions, being in situations where your emotions can feel a bit out of control. So some situations can make you feel like extra sad or maybe extra anxious, or give you mood swings. Those sort of things are normal, and they can happen because of the lesions in our brain. So they are not your fault if you experience this. However, for somebody with MS, it's important to become more and more aware of these symptoms and how to develop a language, develop a way in which we communicate that these are the experiences that we have in our day-to-day life. And it can feel exhausting, but the more we're becoming aware of what's going on in the body, the more we can actually bridge that gap and share it with others and say, hey, today I'm not feeling 100%. My brain is just not working like it should, and it's due to my illness. This can help a lot. So which of these challenges resonate with you the most? What sort of things have happened when it comes to MS? Have you found these challenges in your life when it comes to the symptoms? Just curious. And again, write it in the chat.
Someone has said the fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Just waiting for a few others to come through.
And how has the fatigue impacted you, since you were brave enough to answer first? I'll be curious.
Some people have reacted with a thumbs up to the fatigue, so I'm guessing that also affects them.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has said fatigue as well, and just not being bothered to socialize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is very common.
Someone else has said pain, mobility, brain fog, fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And yeah, a lot of people agreeing with the fatigue.
Yeah.
Not being able to do what I used to be able to do. Mood swings, and it's the invisible symptoms that is hard to explain why I'm not working. Massively uncontrollable emotions and mood swings.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering as well. So all the symptoms that you mentioned will impact communication. As you said, it's hard. It makes it hard to communicate. We're faced with the challenge of having to communicate what's going on in our body. And we're faced with the challenge of other people not seeing what's going on because it's all invisible, and them not understanding what's MS, what exactly is about MS. Are we faking it? Are we just feeling lazy that day when we're saying that we're fatigued? Are we tired just like they're feeling tired, like just missing a few hours of sleep tired? Or is it the tired that we can't move so much? All these things create misunderstandings. If you look at the diagram in the slide, I really like this picture because we have two people. One of them sees a 6 and one of them sees a 9. And I often think of this as how relationships happen in our lives. Each person that we communicate with has a different perspective of the world. And often we can think of the other person as being in the wrong or just not getting it. And then we have so much awareness of what's going on in our body. We feel the fatigue, we feel the pain that's going on. It's so physical, it's so powerful. We feel the anxiety when we are experiencing it, and it's so strong, and it can feel frustrating when others just don't get it. And it's so frustrating that we have to communicate to others what's going on, because sometimes we're just so tired. At least that's what I found in my relationship. It's just I can't be bothered sometimes to communicate because I just don't want to. I wish somebody would just get a little app with everything that's going on, and that will explain everything, and then I don't have to worry about that. So those emotions are normal. However, for the other person that's in the relationship, they don't see what's going on as much, because MS to some extent is invisible, and we can look on the surface very normal. So whenever you're discussing with somebody, keep this picture in mind, that they might just be seeing a 9 while you're seeing a 6. None of them are wrong. Now, no perspective is incorrect. It's just that something is missing. The other person has to do a little walk to be able to see the other point of view. I hope that makes sense. And part of that is it's being open to the idea that there's another perspective out there. There's something else out there that a person is not seeing. And when we accept this, is the question is, how do we bridge that gap? How do we create more understanding with one another? How do we help the other person to understand more of our experience if we have MS? Or how do we try to understand the other better if we know somebody else has MS in our life? So if they have another illness, it doesn't have to be MS, because every human being is going through challenges at one point or another. One thing that I've noticed in my relationship, I mentioned that my partner, my husband, also has an illness, also an autoimmune illness. And that, to some extent, the symptoms that he had were similar, but also very different. And for me, when he started feeling pain and not being able to move out of bed or get up, I've noticed that at first I was just like, well, I felt pain. So to some extent felt frustrated. Well, I'm feeling in pain and you're feeling in pain. Like, what's going on? The two of us are. Who's going to help me if you're not there? Or what can I do to support him? It was like, I'm so tired. And it felt unfair to have this experience in relationship. It felt unfair because I was tempted to consider that the symptoms I was experiencing in that moment were the same as he was experiencing. But as we started to talk more about what's going on in our body, I've learned that even though I was having brain fog that day and he had brain fog that day, and it helped to understand that both of us just can't, don't get us to do taxes on that day because it's just not going to happen, or to manage our bills. At the same time, his experience was different than mine. And just being able to sit down and say, okay, well, how does this feel for you? Like, what's going on? And hearing that words that said, well, I really can't think right now. I can't process the words that you're saying. I feel very tired. It helped me to become more empathic. But it also helped me to see that all of us at different points in time will be with others that may be going through other things. So just because we have a MS, it doesn't mean that something else isn't happening for others. And sometimes nothing happens, but sometimes maybe something else is going on that is invisible. And if we start from the perspective that we're all different at that moment in time, and that each of us has their own perspective, then we can find a way to communicate better and to avoid misunderstandings. So I hope that helps. I want to give you a little situation now. Hopefully you relate a little bit with it. So Emma wakes up feeling like her body has been weighted down by bricks. Her legs are weak, her hands are shaky. Fear fog in her brain makes even simple thoughts feel like a struggle. By afternoon, the fatigue is so overwhelming that she canceled dinner plans with her friends. She texts her friend, hey, not feeling great today, can we reschedule dinner? A few minutes later, Emma gets a reply, again, you always cancel at the last minute. We never see you anymore. How many of you relate with this experience, with this situation? Have you ever been in a similar situation? In Emma's shoes, has this happened to you where you had to change plans, communicate things due to your illness acting up and not feeling great? Just curious. And whether you have been or you haven't, how does Emma feel right now? Let's take a few moments to think what's going on through her mind, receiving that text from her friend. Again, you always cancel that last minute. We never see you anymore. How does she feel? Any thoughts, anything that comes to mind?
Someone has said, I can't relate yet because I don't cancel. I just end up suffering for it later.
Okay.
And someone else has said, I can relate to the friend.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, guilty. Someone has said, sorry, but I have only been diagnosed. I've only just been diagnosed, but I can imagine Emma would feel awful.
Yeah. I like what somebody said also about I can relate to the friend. Yeah. How does her friend feel having somebody who always cancels in the last minute? It's frustrating. It's painful. She's experiencing some loss as well because things don't work out well. And Emma's feeling awful. We can only try to imagine that she's not feeling great. She doesn't want this. She doesn't want this situation to happen in her life. She might even be feeling frustrated, maybe annoyed at her friends sometimes, maybe annoyed at her body, annoyed at herself, maybe feeling guilty that she's chosen to cancel, and maybe she should have actually just pushed through and done it and suffered through it all and then feel even worse the next day. All these things can happen and all these things can go. And actually, what we have here, we can be tempted when we look at this situation, we could be tempted, one, to empathize maybe with Emma and maybe even think, oh, the friend should be more understanding. It doesn't, Emma has a mess, this is normal. Or we could be thinking of the friend and be like, oh, why is she trying it harder? A lot of times our brain may want to choose sides depending on our life experience, and none of this is right or wrong. It's just part of who we are. What's important in this situation when we look at it is to actually just see it as a situation. And for Emma right now has to say something to her friend without feeling guilty. Is there anything that she could say to her friend? Maybe you don't know at this stage, and that's fine, but what could she say? There's something to think about. Or what could her friend say to be more supportive in this situation? Could she have said something different? There's always small changes that can happen in any situation that can improve communication. So I want you to have a look at the slide view, at the next slide. One example that I think in this situation that could be done to navigate conflict is, before we make any judgments, to pause and actually evaluate what's going on through our mind. A bit like what we've done earlier. What is actually going on? If we were in Emma's shoes, there's a lot of emotions that will happen. There's a storm of emotions. It's like there's the fatigue that she's battling, the pain in her body, and then there's going to be the guilt, maybe the regret of not being there with her friends. Maybe at the same time there's a tiredness that she can't even be bothered to be there with her friends, and maybe she feels guilty because she doesn't care more about it. And at the same time, yeah, her body feels like so drained, she can't move in any way. Maybe she doesn't feel anything because the pain of the illness just makes her unable to at that stage because she's just so tired and her body is in pain. So she's going to focus on the immediate pain that's there. All these things are things to observe, and everybody will have a unique individual experience. If you're ever in this situation, let's say in Emma's situation, One thing is to first observe what judgments you make about that situation. Is there any blame towards the friend, towards others? Is there any blame towards the illness? Examples of blame that can happen in this scenario. Things like Emma could be thinking right now, she's so inconsiderate. My friend is so inconsiderate. I'm here in pain and all she cares about is herself. All she cares about is the stupid dinner. Or she might be thinking, I hate that I'm like this. I should have canceled, or maybe I shouldn't have canceled. Maybe I should have taken a painkiller and just tried harder. I'm a horrible friend. Maybe no one will want to be close to me anymore. She could be blaming MS. She could say, this is an illness, sucks so much. I really hate it. I hate, why does this happen to me? Why do I have to suffer? And to feel so much hate towards the experience and the situation that it actually makes her feel worse just because she's frustrated. At the core of all of this, Emma is feeling some emotions. She's feeling pain, maybe she's feeling sadness, maybe she's feeling regret, maybe she's just sad, or she's grieving the loss of a life, of a life where she could have been going out, where she used to. All those things are normal, and each of us may have this situation at one point in time, but it will be unique and different. What's important is to observe what's going on for us in that moment, what's going on when we're in a conflict with a family member, a partner, a friend, a worker, our boss in some way, what's going on when we're not doing things that we used to be able to do at work as well. So observe what's going on in your body, pause before, and notice the judgments that are there, and aim to understand actually where the judgments are, actually what emotions are present there, what's there, because those emotions are real. When we go through a conflict, or when we are in any situation where we communicate, the language that we use will shape our reality. So when Emma says about MS, I really hate my experience. I hate the fact that I have MS so much. Why does this happen to me? The moment we voice those words, the moment we say that language, she's already going to feel worse, because she's already feeling like she's a victim of the world. She's been dealt a bad card, and then she's also trying to understand why. But that question of why is it happening to me never really leads to a good answer, because there's nobody who can answer that question. Why does it happen to me? It doesn't lead to a solution. It just leads to more pain. So one helpful thing to observe in our communication is make a difference between evaluation and observation. When you deal with a situation, there's ways in which we evaluate, when we blame, when we judge the situation, and we use words that assign judgments to experiences. Another way in which we can relate that things is through observation. So instead of judging, why is this happening to me, actually observe what are the facts about that situation instead. An evaluation is full of judgment, full of blame. An observation is simply looking at the data, almost like you have a video camera, you turn it on, and then you just see that experience. Imagine looking at it as an outsider, a bit like how we look at this experience ourselves as a third party. We don't know what's going on fully. We don't assign an interpretation that Emma is doing better, that Emma is wiser or smarter or a better friend or a worse friend. We don't assign that. We simply say, okay, Emma is feeling MS symptoms. She's canceled the dinner. Those are the things that we see. Those are the facts. So focus on the facts of the situation. I'll give you an example because this can feel very theoretical. But if we look at the statements that she's made earlier, she's so inconsiderate. I'm here in pain and all she cares about is herself. An observation will be more like, I am experiencing pain right now, so noticing what's in her body. My friend responded in a way that didn't acknowledge that. She stated the fact, She didn't blame her friend. She didn't blame anybody. She simply said, okay, this is what I observed. My friend didn't acknowledge that. My friend responded in a way that was different than that, maybe. And another way to observe that is she may observe her emotions. She may say, I'm feeling sad at my friend's response. A second evaluation that she may have made is, I hate that I'm like this. Should I have canceled? Maybe I should have taken a painkiller or just tried harder. An observation could be, I'm struggling. So what's going on in her body? With whether I made the right decision about canceling. I'm feeling sadness and regret for not being able to go. So this is where she's noticing the emotions in her body. Simply stating the facts, not blaming herself, not blaming others. While the first one, where in the first example, in evaluation, she's feeling frustrated, and she's sort of when we say we hate the situation, we already make a judgment, an evaluation about that situation. So that's the difference. I hope it helps. And then if we take the last example, this illness sucks so much. I hate this stupid MS. Why do I have to suffer like this? Again, it's all adding sort of a blame towards the world. The fact that we say the illness sucks so much, it doesn't say anything about our experience. It doesn't communicate the facts, but it's taking a position. We already decide that MS is awful, and it doesn't really help it. While if we focus on observing what's going on, we can say, instead of saying this illness sucks so much, we can say living with MS is challenging. Today, I am experiencing symptoms that make things difficult for me. That's more observing. Today, I'm experiencing fatigue, tiredness. I am unable to go to my friend. Today, I had to cancel the dinner. And I'm feeling sad about this experience. I regret. I regret. I may even feel longing for my whole life, for being the friend that used to attend the gatherings, for being a fun friend that used to go out. Those are the emotions that are there, and it's more helpful to focus on that. So why is it important to focus on these things, do you think? Why? Because when we focus on observing what's going on, then we're able to express to others also from our experience, to express our needs. If we don't pay attention to what's going on in our body, we can't tell others what's going on in our body because we don't know ourselves. So instead of focusing on judgments or blame, focus on what's going on in your body, what you're feeling in that moment. Then you can express that to the other person. And expressing doesn't mean assigning blame. Expressing means it's something that usually starts with I statements, and it's purely communicating what's going on, our experience as we see it, as is there. So an example I gave below is, you never listen to me. Instead of saying that, we can say, I feel unhurt when I don't get a response. It's I feel. When we say you never listen to me, we already attack the other person. We blame them, and maybe they do listen. We don't know. Maybe they just were not focusing in that moment. They were not paying attention. But maybe, like, there are other times when they do listen. It's almost like saying that in his entire life, he's never listened to that person. It's very judgmental, and it makes another person sit and close off the communication. When we use I statements, I feel this way, I feel pain, I feel sadness, I feel guilt, I feel regret. It helps the other person to connect with us. It helps communication get open up more, and it helps open the line for resolving any conflict that happens. So communicate how you feel. Today, I feel pain in my body, in difficulty thinking and processing messages. I feel low energy. I value your friendship, and I wish I could be there, but I'm feeling sick. That's how you communicate how you feel. Now, I know some of you mentioned at the beginning that it can be challenging to even know how to communicate. So the trick is it's a practice. You're not going to get it right the first time. And it does start with observing for yourself what's going on in your body, emotionally and physically. MS can impact us in two ways. It can impact the brain, it can impact the body. And I would say it also creates emotions that we need to become aware of what and learn how to express to others. It's not easy, but it can be very helpful to start to pay attention to that. Okay. And the last thing when it comes to resolving conflict is that I'm going to focus on even more is avoid blame. When we're in a situation like Emma, where she, it's not her fault that she's experiencing emotions. It's not her fault that she's going through those difficult, painful MS symptoms, that she has a flare up and that she's forced to cancel it again. At the same time, it's not her friend's fault that, Emma's canceling. It's not her friend's fault for not understanding more about MS. Because one thing that can happen when we're frustrated with our illness is we can expect others to really understand, to go read the pamphlet, come to the doctor, understand all these symptoms, maybe even guess if every day, just guess that we may be feeling pain and tiredness and fatigue. And as humans, it's very hard to understand other people's experiences. We can try, but empathy is a muscle that we grow, and it's easier to not expect others to have it as well. It's nice when people do, but not everybody will have the same life experience. You will meet people that will be completely oblivious about your symptoms. Even if you tell them, even if you give them a whole presentation, message, hear how it impacts me, they may still wake up the next day and just say, hey, why are you so lazy? And that's not your fault, and that's not, to some extent, it's not productive to say it's their fault. What's helpful is to say, okay, what can I do at this moment in time? What can I focus on? And if you focus on just listening to yourself, listening to others, seeking to understand, and just thinking that everybody has a different perspective in that moment, then you can bridge that gap in communication. The moment we assume or we hope from others to do more, to think more, then we assign a burden on everybody that's sometimes too much. And we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment, for failure, for frustration. So focus on what's going on, and hopefully that will help you navigate conflict. Hope that's clear so far. Any questions? And to write them in the chat if you have any questions. How has the presentation been? Is it helpful? Has it met your expectations? I'll stop talking now. Your turn. It's your turn.
I'll just give everyone a few minutes to process and think. Someone said, I don't know if you can see, but someone said, no questions from me, but this has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And your feedback is very much appreciated.
We will send a feedback form after the event as well.
Yeah.
And a few other helpful links via email. So you should get that. Someone else has said very helpful. 2 people have said very helpful.
Yeah.
I think you covered it really well, Larisa. It's a huge topic and very, different for everyone. So yeah,
Mhm.
it was great to hear your experiences as well. Someone has said MS affects everyone in different ways, sometimes so good to understand what the struggles are and to recognize. And someone else has said, thank you so much for your time. Very useful, much appreciated.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. One thing that's been really helpful for me in this MS journey was learning to listen to my feelings. And when I started in this process, I didn't even have a vocabulary for it. Even for my MS symptoms, I didn't have a vocabulary for it. And I almost had to print out what the symptoms are on a piece of paper, like brain fog, difficulty processing, and same with emotions, feeling sadness, feeling pain, those things. You may find it beneficial, especially if you're at the start and if you struggle with communicating, just for yourself to like have them written down. There's, if you Google, there's lots of like lists of emotions and feelings, and even with MS symptoms. That helps with building that awareness. And whenever you're going through something, even physical, like having that list and almost like circling it or like underlying it, it can help you to become aware of how it feels for you, because it's such a unique experience for everybody that we don't know. It's like, it's not like the flu, as I say, it's really not. It's like when you say the flu, everybody gets it, sort of. And even then, I think men suffer a lot more than women when it comes to that, apparently. So I don't know. They say it's a different experience, can be more painful for them. I don't know. But it's this like for you to support yourself, even in good days, especially if you're feeling great and if you don't have an episode of brain fog. When you're feeling fine, I would say start practicing the habit of just noticing the positive feelings as well. Like when you're feeling great, when you're feeling happy, when you're feeling full, if you've eaten a good meal and you're feeling satisfied, noticing that. And then when bad moments happen, then it's a lot easier because you already have built that muscle of observing and noticing and communicating, uh, first with yourself. Then it's a lot easier to talk to others and share from your experience. So that was another tip
Definitely.
that I wanted to mention. Okay, are there any other questions? I see everybody says it's very, very helpful. Okay. If you have any questions as well, feel free to, I guess, send them in the feedback form that Amy will email later, and then we'll do our best to answer them.
I've just put the feedback form in the chat as well if anyone has a quick few minutes now. But if not, like I said, I'll pop it in the email. Um, yeah, is there anything else from you, Larissa? That was brilliant and really informative.
No, I've tried to keep it short and not too overwhelming.
Yeah, no, that's
But
brilliant.
it's like if there's one thing, if we can leave this session with just a few things to do, then that's
Definitely. Yeah. So if anyone wants to watch this back for any of Larissa's brilliant tips, it will be on YouTube as well. But yeah, just thank you so much everyone for joining. And thank you again, Larissa, for such a great workshop.
been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
And
much, everyone.
thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.